Hey, what it do? What it do? What it do? It's your boy Q. And there ain't nothing left to do but to go ahead and get down and do what it do. Man, I'm excited. Been a while since I've gotten to do one of these. And can I just say, we have now had 3 great nights of football. And I am absolutely excited about it. Had a great game tonight. 2 great NFC opponents. You had the Seattle Seahawks. You had the undefeated San Francisco 49ers, who are undefeated no more. Now, when I originally wrote this, I did say that Seattle exposed the undefeated 49ers, but the 49ers did bounce back there in the fourth quarter, so we're just going to go ahead and let that one slide. And at the end of the day, too, you were playing against what I think most people would consider the front runner as far as the league MVP right now at this point, Russell Wilson. But I mean, if we can just be fair and honest for just a second, which I think is easier to do now at this point, since we have finally seen the 49ers lose their first game. But who have they really beat? Can we be real for just a second? What, the Steelers and the Panthers with backup quarterbacks? The surprisingly subpar Rams, the Browns, the Bengals. You kind of see what I'm getting at. Now, look, I'm not going to place like too much weight on that. At the end of the day, you can only play against the guys who are scheduled to line up across the line from you. So, I get it, but I'm not quite ready to buy into this hype as far as the 49ers. It's just like we saw tonight, right? It is just like we saw tonight. Everyone is trying to hop on this hype train of Jimmy G. And what are we going to end up getting instead? We end up seeing that it's really the defense that's carrying the load, right? It's the defense that has really helped propel them to this record. Now, obviously, Jimmy G's had some great games against some really bad defenses, but let's be real for a second here, right? And I'm so glad to see my man Silva Bullets up in the house, because I need to ask you guys a question. I need to ask you guys all a question. How about them Cowboys? How about them Cowboys? You guys tell me, huh? 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 Skull, baby. Skull. Look, I'm like just super excited. It's really hard to like get too hyped up, because let's be honest, as a Vikings fan, we see this every year where we have some good runs, and then the Vikings are just going to do what the Vikings do come the playoffs. But it's hard not to be excited. Quite possibly the best running back duo in the league right now. Quite possibly, when healthy, the best wide receiver duo in the league right now. And we've got a pretty stellar defense, too. Now, the one thing that I would say, as far as the Minnesota, I guess, team as a whole, I would say, let's be honest, Captain Kirk is Captain Kirk. He looked decent last night, but, I mean, the Cowboys are the worst team right now that are in the playoff picture, that are at least in those 6 teams in the NFC at 5-4, because they are the division champs right now if the season were to end today, because they hold that tiebreaker with Philly. But we'll see how things go towards the rest of the season, right? However, there is a team right now in the NFL that doesn't have to worry about their quarterback, which a lot of people are surprised about. I actually live right here in the city. It's been so fun to kind of watch him take over, and that's Lamar Jackson out of Baltimore with the Ravens. I mean, what more can you really say, huh? Not too bad for a running back. Now, from somebody who has watched quite a bit of his game and not just the highlights, I will say that he does have some parts of his probably passing game that still could be improved, I think, as far as the deep ball. But that's not their game right now. Let's be honest. The thing that's made Baltimore really good and really strong right now is that they've taken who they saw as their future franchise quarterback in Jackson, and they built a team around it. Now, look, I'm not going to bore you with, all the stats you've probably heard so far today and yesterday, more rushing yards than LaDainian Tomlinson in his first 16 games and a better passer rating than Tom Brady through his first 16 games. We get that. Look, stats will show what stats will show. But if you have not seen the replay, I think we have probably got to witness this past Sunday, I guess you could say, Jackson's Vic versus the Vikings replay. That patented replay that we're going to see when we talk about Lamar Jackson 10, 15, 20 years from now. When he hit the entire defense with that, press B on Madden, that nasty spin move to get 4 or 5 defenders to miss. It was absolutely amazing. Really fun to watch. I think what we're going to have to really pay attention to over the years, though, is he going to start taking less hits? Let's be honest. Right now, he's really young. He's going to have a little bit of spring in his step getting back up from those hits. But once we get to year 4, 5, 6 in the league, when body's getting a little older, he's taking a little bit more of the beatings. How are things going to look there? Now, I think we've seen some development in his passing games just within the 16 games that he started that I think we're going in the right direction. We just got to hope that we continue to see that. And it's not just Lamar Jackson, if we're fair. The Baltimore defense right now looks very, very stout, which really shouldn't be a surprise. Baltimore's always kind of been known for their defense. Their offense has kind of been what's lacking from them getting into the playoffs, or at least getting some wins in the playoffs anyways. So it's going to be interesting to watch for sure. But talking about embracing a new culture, developing a game plan around their new quarterback, you'll see these coaches and they'll try to draft a quarterback that they think they can mold into their system. And what Harbaugh has done is he's done completely something different. And what I mean by that is, name another quarterback in the league, or even another team in the league, that can line up in a 3 tight end set with all 3 tight ends being a triple threat. The triple threat being that they're very proficient in the pass block, very proficient in the run block, and they can also catch the ball rather well. You can't name one. Name another team in the NFL that could legitimately run the option. I mean, in 2019, the option has almost become obsolete in college, let alone at the NFL level, right? I do think that Seattle has a very good core with, 2 tight ends that can be a triple threat, but I wouldn't quite count them up into that 3 tight end range. But I do think they're a team that you could say is the closest there. But I don't think Russell Wilson's going to legitimately run an option. You know what I mean? And it's funny how quick bandwagons change. When he came into the league, he should be a running back. Even had some, doubters at the end of last year. A couple starts that he had. And even at the start of this year, has a great game week 1, and everyone just wants to blow it off and say that it was because of the Dolphins. And to be fair, the Dolphins do suck, right? But he's continued to show week after week after week a level of consistency and an ability to find some holes in the defense to consistently move the ball down the field. But while we're talking about bandwagons, and especially talking about bandwagons in the NFL, can I just ask everyone one question? One thing I noticed, kind of, I guess you could say, looking around sports media towards the end of last week, was it seemed like a whole bunch of people wanted to start this whole story of, we should apologize for bashing Gruden for trading away Khalil Mack and getting rid of Cooper because they looked somewhat decent at 5-4. And really, we could say the same thing, just like we were talking about at the beginning when it came to the 49ers and who have they beaten. We could really say the same thing about Oakland, right? Now, obviously, we haven't seen Oakland be anywhere close to this good in the recent past. But who have they beat? The Broncos? the Lions, the Bears, the Chargers. Oh my. I mean, their highest quality win is against Andrew Luck's replacement. Now, granted, Brissett's a really good quarterback this year, and he's showing that he's got some potential, but obviously that team's game plan wasn't structured for him heading into the season. Is that fair? And look, I don't want to spend too much time on the NFL or even really in football in general, but we've had, as I said, a great weekend in football. It even started on Saturday, right? Because on Saturday, we got to see, well, quite a few games. We got to see Oklahoma and Wisconsin both hold off late game surges from both Iowa State and Iowa, respectively, right? And we saw Baylor needing triple overtime to stay undefeated out in Fort Worth. Some great matchups as far as top 25 games. But then we had, I think, the two games that were probably considered the matchup of the weekend. And that's going to be, of course, one, Minnesota proving that they're for real, keeping their undefeated record alive, knocking off number 4 Penn State. And Alabama fell to LSU, and they actually snapped their 31 home game winning streak, which is really impressive. That a NCAA team, can we talk about it? 31 games at home they won straight. You figure usually you're playing, 5, 6 home games in a year? So we're talking, 5, 6 seasons basically straight. They haven't lost a game at home. Now, it was a really good game. Alabama did fall behind rather early, so a nice run that they had both going into half and coming out of half was kind of negated in the fact that they had dug themselves such a big hole to begin with. But it was a really fun game to watch all the way through. Now, the unfortunate thing is, of course, now with Alabama losing, along with Penn State losing, the college football playoff picture is going to be really, really fun to watch as it starts to unfold. Not only tomorrow being Tuesday with this week's rankings, but how the rankings unfold over these last, 3, 4 weeks, I think, right? Because let's think about it. Now, obviously, LSU's, how do you not put them at number 1 after knocking out Alabama, right? Even if it wasn't Alabama, 2 versus 3, you know they're going to be making the leap over Ohio State. Ohio State will basically flip-flop with them and become number 2. And you also got to figure Clemson, they're still undefeated. They're the reigning national champions, even though they really don't have the strongest of schedules. But hey, you can only play who lines up, across a line from you on any given Saturday, right? So we're not going to hold that against them too much. But we're going to get to that here in a minute, as far as you can only play against who lines up across from you, right? Because I think that there seems to be this weird little twist on that when it comes to the polls itself. But so we've established, right? LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's 1, 2, and 3. After that, though, 4 through 10 is where it gets messy, right? Because after LSU and Ohio State and Clemson, you're going to have Georgia, Oregon, Minnesota, and even Oklahoma, who all have legitimate arguments for the number 4 seed. Penn State's loss is too recent, and the Utes lost to an unranked opponent. So even though they both have 1 losses as well, they really don't have an argument for the number 4 seed at this point. Baylor's also undefeated, but they've just got a really, really weak schedule. They haven't played any ranked teams yet. They can make their case this upcoming week when they play the Sooners, and vice versa. The Sooners are going to be able to add to their case if they're able to take down undefeated Baylor. Should be a really good game this upcoming week, actually. The good news, though, is with Alabama falling, and they're not going to finish undefeated, and now with their strength of schedule being so low, where they might actually miss out of the playoffs, it's going to be one of those situations where, like the last 3 years, where the case of expanding to an 8-team playoff seems to grow even stronger, right? And every team that is left that's still in contention, I think, other than Clemson, has some pretty tough competition. You figure that Minnesota still is going to have to play Ohio State, and not only Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game if they make it that far, being undefeated, but they also play Iowa this week, and Iowa is a pretty tough matchup. You've also got Ohio State still got to play Michigan, who's pretty tough. They do also still have to play Penn State this weekend. LSU, of course, they just got to finish getting through the SEC, and you can say the same thing about Georgia and Alabama as well. So we can definitely see a lot of people moving up and down throughout the college playoffs through the rest of the season. We're just going to have to keep our eyes on the ball, on how things roll throughout the rest of the year. But I wanted to kind of go back to this SEC bias thing, right? Because I think we all know that once they release the college football playoff rankings tomorrow, that Alabama more than likely is going to be number 4. If they're not number 4, they're not falling any farther down than 6, right? But I want us to think about something, even just where they're sitting right now. Because the whole point of the rankings, or at least the way they've made it seem in the past, is your strength of schedule and how good your team's potential is, right? Who you've played, how bad you've beat them, how many games you've won. Can we talk about something real quick? If your resume read beating all non-ranked teams and your only win was against a 24th ranked Texas A&M team who had been falling down through the rankings every week prior to you playing them, and you weren't out of the frickin' Bama, would you even be ranked in the top 10? Oh, talking to you, I need you to look at me right here. Would they? I think we all know the answer to that, right? If they're going to be in the top 10, they'd be maybe 8, 9, 10. It's legitimately straight off their legacy. And what's more frustrating than that, because I'll give them the benefit of the doubt of you can only play who you line up against on any given Saturday, right? But when we've looked at the playoffs in the past, when it comes to one-loss Oklahoma teams, one-loss Ohio State teams, or any one-loss team outside the SEC, one of the biggest, I guess you could say, arguments as to why that team was left out of the playoffs was because of their strength of schedule. Even though you can't control who you're playing against, you can control who you schedule out of your out-of-conference play. However, the SEC schools, and it's not just Alabama at this point, folks, it's really all of the SEC. If you look at the top, they just schedule cupcakes outside their conference. And I'm not saying the SEC isn't good, okay? Let's not go twisting words around and trying to make it seem like I'm making a bigger point of this than I am. SEC is arguably the second best, if not the best, football conference in college football from top to bottom. I would have to say if you're looking from top to bottom, the Big Ten is better, although the SEC is more top heavy, if that makes more sense. Everyone's sticking with me. We're not having to slow this thing down for the people who fell off the bus, right? Good. Now, the good news with the playoff picture heating up and getting really messy again, we've seen every year there be a bigger talk about expanding the playoffs. And I really don't get why we haven't expanded it to 8 teams at this point. You got your 5 power conference teams that I think really should all get an automatic bid because, again, you can only play against the teams that line up across from you, right? So that's going to be most of your schedule regardless. And then I also think if you're going to have an 8-team playoff, you have your 5 power conference champions. I also think that you have something written in where you can't have more than 2 representatives from any given conference. So you wouldn't be able to have, for instance, an LSU, Georgia, Alabama, right? You could have like an Oklahoma that would allow you to maybe have an Oklahoma and a Baylor from a good conference that isn't normally seen as a great conference, who have two teams with one loss. Maybe now they can both send their representative. But with the college football playoffs comes my favorite time of the year, makes the tip off of my favorite time of the year, which is college basketball. Last week we got to see some great games of the start of it with I think they call it, what is it, the Champions Classic for State Farm. Duke pulled off a great game against, nice close win against Kansas, and the preseason number 1 seed Michigan State Spartan. My team, y'all know I ride and die with Izzo. They did unfortunately take an L from the Wildcats of Kentucky. But that wasn't, unfortunately, the biggest hit that the Michigan State Spartans took. They did find out actually Saturday night that Zachary Winston, Cassius Winston's younger brother, died in an accident. And actually, Cassius ended up going out and playing against the Bearcats of Bingham that night. Dropped a double-double. A lot of strength and courage by that man. Thoughts and prayers are definitely out to him. But that's not the only basketball going on. We're about 10 games into the NBA season, and I think yeah, we're going to go ahead and do the unexpected. We're going to go ahead and stay away from talking about the Lakers. I know, your boy Q, better known as the LeBron hater, a.k.a. the LeBron realist, is going to hold off on talking about the Lake Show for right now. I mean, they look good for having 2 prior defensive players of the years and 2 NBA champions other than LeBron James, who's arguably the best player of this millennium, right? So let's give him a little bit of time and really see how things develop and see them beat some teams other than like teams that might be a 7 or 8 seed in the playoffs. Not throwing shade, but let's just go ahead and move on. Let's move on. Because really the big thing that I wanted to talk about when it came to the NBA is all this hype about these 2 words: load management. And I guess I can understand why ESPN broke the story the way they did and tried to make this thing a bigger deal than it really is, because Kawhi sat out of a nationally televised game that ESPN was covering. So I get it. They're salty. So they're going to kind of twist things around and talk about what they're now calling or maybe not calling, but acting like it's an epidemic in the NBA, which is players sitting out because of load management. And first, let's just address the elephant in the room. Why did no one worry about this when Kawhi was missing 22 games in Toronto last year? Kawhi played 60 games last year. I didn't hear any complaints about load management then. I also didn't hear any complaints when, because he took the extra games off during the season, Kawhi Leonard was hands down the best player in the playoffs and led the Toronto Raptors to their first NBA championship in franchise history. Didn't hear any complaints about load management then. But I guess now that he's out in LA, out in Hollywood, everything has to change. And this is nothing new, okay? Load management has been around in the NBA for years. Load management back in the day was a minute restriction, making sure you're not playing so many minutes in a game. You might get an occasional night of rest, but let's not act like Greg Popovich hasn't been load managing his players down there in San Antonio for years. Or are we forgetting about 2012 where they were fined $250,000 for sitting, 3 of their best players? Not even Greg Popovich, which is debatably the best coach in NBA history. But let's talk about the one that you guys like the debates to go. Hear LeBron James for a second. Shoot, I'm not staying away from talking about LeBron James. Shame on me. Let's talk about him for a minute. I mean, we're going to act like just because he played 82 games once 2 seasons ago in 16 seasons, that he hasn't taken a couple nights off to rest the body. Like, come on, man. Let's get real for a minute. I think when Kawhi Leonard signed his deal to go out to LA, the reason they paid him all that money was not for him to play 82 games. I am pretty sure the reason that they paid both him and Paul George to come out to LA was to bring home a title. And look, I get it. You might have someone who's paid decent money to go to a Clippers game, and it might be like the only game they go to all year, and now the star isn't playing. But can we be fair and honest? If Kawhi Leonard tweaked his ankle the night before, the same thing happens and no one's complaining about it, right? Same thing happens. Oh, well, hopefully he's healthy come the playoffs, because that's when it matters anyways, right? Look at how much we've killed the Houston Rockets for the last, 3, 4, 5 years for being a great regular season team, but they continue to get knocked out of the playoffs, and we say that the regular season doesn't matter. But now you want to martyr this man, essentially, because he's not playing in every regular season game that doesn't matter. Does that make sense to you? Or am I missing something here? Maybe I'm missing something. You know, I'm pretty sure that the whole goal, the whole objective isn't, for them to just show up and play 82 games. And I get it. They're entertainers, right? Like, obviously, as much as they are competitors, we all do tend to forget that they are also entertainers. Kind of like reality shows. It's just in the form of a sport, essentially, right? But the whole point is to win rings. So if we're holding out for the ultimate goal, I don't see the problem here. Unless maybe I'm just not getting. I really don't. But what I do find funny is the people that seem to complain about load management are also the ones that kind of complain about, like, not getting to have as many sick days at work, right? Oh, I gotta be here. Even though I could spread this to the whole office. Even though I can get more sick by coming in today. But you want these guys to come out and, like, risk more injuries. Like, look at last year in the finals. Like, we can not say directly that the calf / Achilles injury / whatever, it was beforehand that turned into the injury for KD was strictly because of how, worn out his body was from the, regular wear and tear of the season. But I think we can all agree that it probably didn't help. What if KD had taken an extra night off here and there last year? Do we maybe see that he doesn't have a season-ending injury at the end of the year? We don't know. But we want the best product out on the court when it matters the most, which is the playoffs. Sorry you miss out on the best entertainment for a regular season game. Like, why are we even complaining about a regular season game? What was that? Like game 8, game 9 for the Clippers? Like, what does it really matter? The Bucks still only won by, like, I think 4, 5, whatever it was, without Kawhi out there. Probably would have been a routing if the Claw was out there. Let's get real. All right, but that is going to wrap up everything as far as tonight for our first episode of Games, Sports, and All the Smoke. We've talked about sports. I gave y'all all the smoke. It's time for us to have some fun and go ahead and get to these games over here on Twitch / YoBoyQ. Feel free to swing on by and have some fun with your boy. If you're watching this after the fact over on YouTube, do me a favor. Go ahead and leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think as far as the topics we talked about. Maybe anything you want me to talk about up in the upcoming days, upcoming weeks, anything you want me to keep an eye out for. Also, if you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button, Make sure you got your notifications turned on so you can always stay up to date with your boy. Otherwise, this is your boy Q signing out.